And the reason, of course, is that the Halliburton Corporation built a spur line from the outside of Canada, the second largest uranium source in the world, in Central Australia near Ayers Rock. And, of course, the mining operations are owned by the Rio Tinto mines. That's primarily owned by the Queen and the Carlyle Group, which is primarily the Prince of the King of Saudi Arabia, the Queen, and the Rothschild banks are the primary owners. So more than 85% of the uranium on Earth is being mined by basically functionaries of the Rothschilds. And of course,
hardly a surprise. Go on.
No, not a surprise. In fact, it's amazing. You keep on turning around the corners and always finding the same kinds of salamanders under the rock.
The same people, folks. When you've got all the countries on the planet except 3 of them under the Rothschild central banking system, come on.
Yeah. So what people need to realize, this is not a conspiracy theory, as Tex Mara says. This is conspiracy science. When you use logic, when you use investigative journalism, when you use just reporting your actual experiences, and you put it all together, it's not hard. The problem is it's hard for people emotionally to take that step because they don't want to believe that human beings could be this gutless.
They don't want to believe it.
They don't want to believe it. No. They don't want you to tell them something scary, and if they do tell you something, they want you to tell you that you're going to control it or you know everything about it or when it's going to happen. Well, what I can tell you is what we're doing is we're tempting with the fire of the dragon. And our civilization is closer to a nuclear annihilation, a biological weapon annihilation, than we were during the Cold War. We're far more dangerous now. Far more dangerous.
Agreed. We must also understand, excuse me, Bill, that the idea of social engineering and manipulation is also a science, just like conspiracy science.
Oh, absolutely. In fact,
these people, and let me finish, they have so many avenues with which to change the way people think, behave, to rewire their brains physically almost and literally, the way they act for life. You wouldn't believe it. And the average person wouldn't want to hear it if they even had the mind that could take the actual input of that kind of data. They wouldn't want to hear it. Go ahead.
Right. Well, they don't want to hear things like they can remotely influence them through remote influencing technology, which has been researched by the Russians.
Yeah, they don't even need microwaves. They can do it with RI. You're right.
They can do it with RI. They can do it with all kinds of technologies, put it over broadband, over power lines, all kinds of technologies. The fact is, though, when you clear your mind spiritually and mentally, when you detoxify yourself, you make yourself bulletproof, especially when you remineralize your body. That's why I tell people, having a clean diet and detoxing and getting off gluten, if you're gluten sensitive, and removing allergens and not having fluoridated water, you're not going to survive and even make the right decisions, financially or otherwise, unless you do this. It's not
exactly. Question, if you're not gluten sensitive, can you get away with a little bit of it?
Yes, and the fact is, if you go to another country like Europe, a lot of time people will say, well, they're gluten sensitive and they ate something inadvertently, didn't get sick. It's because of what they've done to the soil and the food and everything. It's like drinking cow's milk. I remember giving raw cow's milk to my patients for years, and these kids, if they had regular cow's milk, they had bloody diarrhea, and they ended up in the hospital. As soon as they had regular cow's milk from cows that was not homogenized or gone through all the horrible things that destroyed, and it was actually cows that eat grass, and have 6 times as much conjugated linoleic acid, another immunoglobulin transfer factor in their milk, guess what? Those kids get healthier. They started putting on weight. They didn't get sick. There was no such thing. Food allergy is caused by food, and I did research on this going back 30 years on this, so I'm an expert on it. It's called haptens. I started doing work on it in the early 80s with Dr. Chung and Vojdani, sending blood samples down to the UCLA research lab. What it is when chemicals attach to proteins of food, or you modify them with genetically modification, those proteins don't get recognized as normal, and the body's immune system goes, oh my gosh.
How can they? Of course.
They can't, because these chemicals alter the quaternary structure of the protein, expose side groups, make it look like
something the body's never seen before.
Right, so the body says, that's not milk, that's toxic stuff from hell.
So we fight it, and the immune system...
So your body fights it, and what it does is it also looks like something in your body, a protein section, which is called homology. It'll attack a protein of another body protein, and it'll attack it. So we know, for example, if you get allergic to milk, the gliadin of milk gluten looks identical to the P100 protein, the S100 protein in your brain, so it'll cause neurofibrillar tangles. So if you look at cultures that are processing milk and gluten bread, they're processing these foods. As you process them, they cause you to attack body proteins, have homologous sections of amino acids that are identical. And we know that. This is.
I can't prove it, but I'll bet 150 years ago, the percentage of lactose intolerant Americans was very low.
Very low. The reason is the lactose intolerance thing is induced, just like a lot of the illnesses are induced. And the thing is, some of these are what we call epigenetically induced. One generation gets more and more insulin resistant. The next generation turns diabetic at age 14.
Right.
We're seeing, for example, one of the things that I've been doing research on for years is what causes diabetes. And I'm doing work with Dr. Mayor Eisenstein, and we're going to be doing some fancy lab tests at facilities in Chicago with 100 doctors. And we're measuring with a machine called a core that measures the metabolic rate. But I proposed years ago during my research that there's a protein called TRH. It's a hormone released not from the brain but from your gut, your jejunum. But if you don't release enough of it because you're toxic, this causes your fat cells to generate what's called lymphokines that actually cause insulin resistance. So diabetes is caused by our toxic diet. So you're literally starving to death, and your body goes into what's called protection mode. So when you see someone that's obese, they're basically toxic. When they're turning diabetic, they're toxic. And, sauna can help. Getting them off the food allergens can help. Getting the fluoride out of their water can help. And using artificial things to try to get their TRH up, which is an analog of human chorionic gonadotropin, HCG, or homeopathic. But our world's dying, and the population doesn't get it. We are near what's called a peak of the biological presentation of humankind if we don't stop poisoning our world. We're near the peak. And what's so distressing is when you talk to doctors that don't get it. They don't get it that, like, for example, the latest is Dr. Brudzinski. For 30 years, has been doing research and proved that his anti-neoplastins actually will stop cancer. And the FDA, the Texas Medical Board, is coming at him. So if
they've been going at the poor guy for 20 years.
For 20 years. So what's happening is, I've known Dr. Brudzinski for 20-plus years. This guy is absolutely in a class by himself, brilliant.
Yeah.
And he's gutsy. And he said, I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing as long as it's legal. Well, the fact is that he's touched the Midas stone of you cannot touch the holy grail of cancer because it's profitable. For every person that gets cancer, it generates for the healthcare system hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars. So they don't want somebody inventing some non-toxic way. So if you get a multicentric astroglioma of the brain, we don't blast you with radiation, make you die horribly, because people don't understand this, but doctors get traumatized going through training, most of them, and most of them, their personalities will crumple, and they'll become very compliant. And there's the odd one, like me, that not only gets more determined to fight it, but gets really vicious to fight it. That's why I have a radio show, because I'm constantly fighting this. Tonight I had a Hispanic family in my studio, and I won't give out their names. Little girl got meningitis back in February. 4 months ago, they tried to give the parents in English, they're Hispanic and don't speak English, papers so they could discontinue her life support. Luckily, their daughters were bilingual. Good little American girls, okay, and they're American. They're not Mexican. And what happened is, I gave them advice tonight what they need to do to help this little girl come out of her coma. And I gave them 59 pages of research. I told them the kind of nutrients that we can give, hyperbaric oxygen that can get her brain waking
absolutely.
up. And pulse magnetic field therapy. Now, why don't we have innovation so we can cure illness? Because it's not profitable. Now, when doctors like Brudzinski or Dr. Deagle, who's had more than my share of persecution, try to step up to the plate and help people, the fact is the system is evil to the bone and populated by gutless jellyfish. I remember one doctor said to me once, "For God's sake, Dr. Deagle, I used to think you were a nut, but now I know you're brilliant, and I know you're gutsy, but I can't stand the guilt of knowing what you're going to tell me." Now that's the state of the art.
Yeah.
And the problem is that and I see the collapse of the Occupy Wall Street. And I had my son, he was down there for a month, and he luckily got out of there a day before they assaulted all these kids in the middle of the night. I said, unless we have our Second Amendment right militia guarding our First Amendment right people who want to be able to assemble safely, we're not going to have free speech. And once they do have some kind of thing to call it the guard, they don't need to create detention camps. They're going to make our homes our detention camp with our forced vaccinations because they have a pandemic, and the World Health Organization, as of 2006, can force vaccinate you at gunpoint if necessary, because they'll consider you a public health risk if you're not vaccinated, even though if the vaccine was so damn good, why do I have to be vaccinated if you're so protected? It doesn't even follow logic, does it?
It's not linear thought even. It's
not linear thought. And I get doctors and nurses panicking, calling me, "Doctor, I know these vaccines are bad. I don't want to take them." Doctors, nurses, they call me every month, and they're in a panic. What do I do? I'm going to lose my job. The hospital will just burn me.
They will, too, yeah.
And they do, and they're frightened. I said, you know what? You need to grow some cojones. Just like I did with San Diego Gas and Electric, and I realized, like, ooh, people out there, don't be a doormat. If you're, like I am, a Messianic Christian believer, we're made in the image of our Creator God. Stand up, speak out, and realize that the world out there is ready to consume you. There's no compromising with evil. You have to stomp it out.
No,
And then we see that with Michelle Bachman. Is it okay, Jesus, if I can waterboard? Okay. Come on.
Yeah.
I don't think so. Check it on my show, too. NutriMedical, 12 to 3, Monday to Friday, Pacific time.
Take care.
It's an amazing thing we're living in, this mess.
It is. It is
amazing.
Indeed. See you next week.
But we're going to keep on fighting. God bless you, Jeff.
Thank you, Bill. You too. And thanks to all of you for being here tonight. We'll be right back with you middle of the week already tomorrow, the 17th of November. Talk to you then.